Here are some important notes of chapter Weavers, Iron Smelters and Factory Owners of Class 8 History. What kinds of cloth had a large market in Europe? Cotton and silk textiles had a huge market in Europe. Textiles were by far the most popular, both for their fine quality and exquisite craftsmanship. Different varieties of Indian textiles, for example, jeans, kosais or khasa, bandana, and jamdani, from the 1680s, there started a craze for printed Indian cotton textiles. In England and Europe, mainly for their exquisite floral designs, fine textures, and relative cheapness, rich people of England, including the Queen herself, wore clothes of Indian fabric. What is Jamdani? Jamdani is a fine muslin on which decorative motifs are woven on the loom, typically in grey and white. Often a mixture of cotton and gold thread is used. The most important centers of Jamdani weaving were Dhaka in Bengal and Lucknow in United Provinces. What is bandana? It refers to the brightly colored and printed scarf for the neck or head. Originally, it means tying. It is a type of cloth produced through a method of tying and dyeing. Who are the Agarias? The Agarias are an Indian community of iron smelters in late 19th century. After a series of famines, many of Agarias deserted their villages and never worked as smelters again. Now we will see fill in the blanks. A. Tipu's sword was made of wood's steel. B. India's textile exports declined in the 19th century. How do the names of different textiles tell us about their histories? European traders first encountered five cotton cloths from India carried by Arab merchants in Mosul in present day Iraq. So they begin referring to all finely woven textiles as muslin, a word that acquired wide currency. When Portuguese came to India in search of spices, they landed in Calicut on the Kerala coast in southwest India. The cotton textiles which they took back to Europe along with the spices came to be called as calico, and subsequently it became the general name for all cotton textiles. Cheens is derived from cheent, a cloth with small and colorful flowery designs. Other cloths were noted by their place of origin, such as Kasim Bazar, Patna, Orissa, Calcutta, etc. In Britain, cotton industries were developed which affected textile producers in India. First, Indian textiles had to compete with British textiles and American markets. Second, exporting textiles to England also became increasingly difficult since very high duties were imposed on Indian textiles imported into Britain. By the early 20th century, the artisans producing iron and steel faced new competition. Iron and steel factories come up in India. In 1904, Charles Weld, an American geologist, and Dorabji Tata, the eldest son of Jamshedji Tata, traveled to Chhattisgarh in search of iron ore deposits. They wanted to set up a modern iron and steel plant in India. A large area of forest was cleared on the banks of the river Suvarnarekha to set up the factory and an industrial township. Jamshedpur, Tisco began producing steel in 1912. Before Tisco, India was importing steel that was manufactured in Britain. The situation was changed by the time Tisco set up. In 1914, the First World War broke out, and steel produced in Britain had to meet the demands of war in Europe. War continued for several years, so Tisco had to produce shells and carriage wheels for the war. Tisco became the biggest steel industry within the British Empire. In the case of iron and steel, industrial expansion occurred when British imports into India declined and the market for Indian industrial goods increased. Development of the nationalist movement and the industrial class emerged stronger and the demand for government protection became louder. Thank you. So these were some important notes from the chapter Weavers, Iron Smelters and Factory Owners. Did you like this episode? Make sure to subscribe and also hit the bell icon. This is Shivangi Priya signing off.